Hey guys, it's your boy Electro Scott. Welcome back to the channel here today. Today I am going to be giving my spoiler review of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. If you haven't already, check out my spoiler free review and vlog of the film. Link will be in the description down below. And anyway, let's get started. So at the beginning of the film, Ethan Hunt is given his mission in an abandoned house in Amsterdam from a new IMF recruit, and his mission is to retrieve one half of a key which will give whatever user with the other part of the key. I think it's called a sham. I can't remember what kind of key it is, but it's a very special key, and yeah, this key will allow the user full control or the power to destroy the entity, which is what they call the artificial intelligence throughout the movie. Also, in the beginning, Ethan Hunt takes out a group of mercenaries who are trying to kill Ilsa Faust, the new um, protagonist from Rogue Nation and Fallout. She is presumed dead, but is still alive for the second act of the movie. Moving forward, Ethan then goes back to the United States in Washington to hear a conversation between the heads of security, national security, um, Eugene Kittredge, the director of the CIA, and more officials talking about the AI and its capabilities and what they want to use it for. Eugene Kittredge and the director of national security in the US have very different viewpoints on how to use the AI throughout the world and trying to make America different in their own way. Ethan then shows him the key that he retrieved from Ilsa, who is presumed dead, before shooting a tranquilizer dart and then going back to work disguised as him, wearing the classic Mission Impossible masks, which he did to get into the room, as he was wearing the mask of his secretary, I think it was, to get into the room. Who I thought the AI was going to be, or I thought he was going to be the bad guy because of how he looked in the room. So yeah, that's why a lot of people think that Ethan Hunt can pass off as a bad guy or rogue agent, which he does do throughout pretty much every single movie. He goes rogue at the beginning, and then has to prove his and his team's innocence at the end of the film, which is what he also does here. Ethan and his team then go to Abu Dhabi to retrieve the other half of the key, which is a counterfeit, which a buyer was going to give to Gabriel and his team or someone else for $4 billion. But it's wrong, everything goes wrong, and Ethan then meets Grace, who is a well renowned thief, and she supposedly makes a deal with Ethan but then goes back on it and goes to Venice to give the key to someone, but she then steals it back from him because, well, she doesn't actually steal it back from him because that was counterfeit, and the other half of the key is actually with someone else, which we don't find out until the end of the movie, and we don't actually know how they got it, but I presume it was through the United States and CIA channels. Anyway, Ethan and his team go to Venice to find out who Gabriel is and what he is up to, and they find this out through Ilsa Faust, and Ethan realizes that Gabriel was the man who sent him down the path to join the IMF, as he was the one who got away, and Ethan got blamed for murdering his former lover Mia 30 years prior to the events of this film. Ethan and his team also reacquaint themselves with the White Widow, Elena Moscovia, I can't remember her last name, and her brother Zolo as well, who are also trying to buy the key to become super rich to the highest bidder, which that bargain or deal will happen on the Orient Express tomorrow. Ethan and his team then have a back and forth between Gabriel and his goons, the White Widow and her brother, and Grace then puts the other half of the key into Zola's pocket. Hold on. And then pickpockets him and tries to sell it before getting chased through the streets of Venice when she's trying to get away, and she encounters Gabriel. Meanwhile, Ethan is on pursuit, and so is Ilsa, but Ethan gets into a fight with Paris, who is Gabriel's henchwoman, who's been chasing them throughout Rome in a very cool action sequence when Ethan and Grace have to switch cars from a police car, a motorbike, a regular black car, and a small yellow Fiat Panda, which was used hilariously throughout the chase, as Ethan and Grace didn't even know how to use it. Then after that, they IMF team convinces Grace to join after Ilsa was killed on the bridge by Gabriel in a very heartbreaking scene, which actually made me cry a little bit before moving on to the next scene. They convince her, and she does can decide to join the IMF, and she decides to pose as the White Widow wearing a mask. Ethan was supposed to pose as her brother, but it didn't work, so he then gets onto the fast-moving train, which the brakes were stopped by Gabriel and his henchwoman, who tried to get the key whilst on the train. Gabriel eventually does get the key after Ethan crashes into the train after jumping off a really large cliff and then parachuting into the air off his bike, which he had jumped off of earlier, and then crashing into the train, knocking out Zola, who is still alive for some weird reason. Grace then finds out that the buyer is Kittredge, who has the other half of the key, and then she then declines the $100 million offer from him because she realises that the key in the wrong hands can do devastating things, and she doesn't believe the CIA is capable of having that much power, and neither does Ethan and his team, who believe that that is true. Then there's a great fight scene on top of a train between Ethan and the bad guy when Ethan gets the key and convinces the two CIA agents to get everyone off the train, as everyone's going to die as the train explodes on a bridge after Gabriel leaves it. Everyone survives, including Ethan and Grace, who are at the end of the train trying to knock off the front part of the train where the brakes were, which they successfully do. And then there's a tense scene where they're trying to get to each compartment before they get to the one which doesn't fall down. It's very tense. Grace's clothes even catch fire in part of that scene, which they then put out. Also, Ethan had spared Paris's life earlier in Venice by not knocking her on the head with the crowbar which he had disarmed her with during that alleyway fight sequence. So she then tells Ethan where she knows the entity's source code will be, so he can use the key to destroy the entity. Also, I really do like the entity's design. It's like it's crying out its knowledge of the world so that it can use that to calculate each person's next moves and try to stay one step ahead of each person in their situations in life. I really enjoyed that. And also the white lines just makes it even more scary, and the noise as well. Excuse me, I'm just have the worst cough today, but still want to do it for the grind. Anyway, so then Ethan gets the key, and Grace then meets with Kittredge, who accepts his offer to join the IMF. Also earlier, Luther had to go off-grid to try and decode what part of the entity he thinks is still left on the hard drive he was using to hack the satellite when he and Benji were trying to communicate with Ethan during his chase to Gabriel throughout Venice. So I hope we see more of him doing that during the sequel. Ethan then gets away with Benji in Benji's car at the rendezvous point after using the Skywing to escape. And then the two CIA men who have been hunting him throughout the entire movie, not throughout the entire movie, but ever since Ethan went to Abu Dhabi on the airport, they believe that Ethan is innocent, but they still try to get him to question him, but he gets away on his Skywing to meet Benji at the rendezvous point, and they then drive away with a narration from Kittredge explaining to Ethan what he should do next, and then it cuts to credits. Also, the title sequence is really great, and that's all I've got for you guys. And also, the final shot is of the submarine after it exploded at the beginning, when the Russians tried to use the AI, but then they were fooled by the US, and then the AI went rogue and self-aware and destroyed the Russian submarine, killing everyone inside, starting the mission where they tried to get the two halves of the key who were on the two most important people on that submarine, I think, anyway. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today, guys. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Also, turn on your notifications so you never miss a video. And that's being said, I'm Luke Truscott, and your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to watch Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 at any cinema nearby you. Have a great evening, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.